Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I teach in big classrooms, so I didn't think it'd be a problem. So you may be wondering what I'm doing up here. 나는 서울에서 태어나고 고등학교 졸업할 때까지 한국에서 살았어요. So I was born in South Korea and lived there till I graduated high school when I came to the States to go to college. So I have kind of a unique perspective on Korea, being both Korean and American. While I'm an American citizen, my heart will always be in Korea. My parents were Methodist missionaries there for 37 years. My mother was a college professor at Sogang University and then the Kamnigyo Shinakdae, Methodist Theological Seminary. And my father worked in child welfare first he started Unpyeong Chonjawan. It's Angel's Haven. It was an orphanage that has developed into one of the largest social service agencies in Korea. And then he was the 회장 at Holt 아동복지회, Holt Children's Services Director. So I spent my life navigating two worlds, and I think it brings some perspective to what we're dealing with here with the United States and Korea and what to do about North Korea.
Thank you, Dr. Tice. So any questions about, thank you. Actually, I teach at the large classroom as well, so. But anyway, so is there any questions about Ambassador An's talk? Or any related questions? For example, I mean, you may be able to ask about the current anti-Asian segments in the United States as well. Any kind of questions, please.
My name is Sumit Asukla, and I'm a member of the Asian community here, former president of the Network of Asian American Organizations, and I'm involved with the City of Boston in a couple of commissions. So I have actually a dual question. When you talk about Korean unification, it reminds me of the time when we were talking about German unification. And there was a lot of concern as to how reunification would ruin the economy of West Germany. So given the imbalance in economies between North and South, given the imbalance in weaponry, one has nuclear weapons and developing ICBMs, and the other one does not. If we make peace in this environment and leave the nuclear weapons alone, then will we be forcing Japan and South Korea to match and develop nuclear weapons? And secondly, related to that, will North Korea ever be willing to make peace with the Kim family in charge?
Very concerning comparison with the unification or reunification of Germany. In case of Germany, there was imbalance between West and East. East Germany was relatively small, and its population size was only 1/4, 25% of West Germany's population. And its territory was only 40% of West Germany's size. Still, they unified through absorption by the West of East overnight. And I remember East German diplomats, all of them lost jobs after reunification of October 1990. And the cost of unification thereafter was huge. And according to statistics, it amounted as high as 1.5 trillion euros. But how about Korea? In Korea, population size of South is twice as large as North Korea, whereas surface size is even a little bit smaller than North Korea. So if we adopt the same methodology as Germany did, it would, cause huge disruptions, and cost will be enormous. So our approach is not approach of absorption. If we are going to achieve reunification, I'm sure we will, it will be a long-term process, beginning with economic cooperation. And how do we unify or adjust political system? Well, later. And as we proceed with economic integration, then North Korea, living standard will go up, and they will become more open and more liberal. So that is our approach towards unification, in difference to Germany's. And concerning the North Korea, is it willing to agree to reunification? Of course. Korean people has been living until division in 1945 as a unified country for more than 1,500 years. So it's a anomaly that we are divided. And also, as we can see from the fact that North Korean leader met with our president, current president, 3 times. Well, these days, as I said, the dialogue has been deadlocked, but their willingness to meet each other means North Korea is keenly interested in reunification. What I'm worried about is that the younger generation, they become more and more not interested or indifferent to reunification. So, time is maybe running out. So we have to start the process towards reunification sooner than later. And during that process, we have to convince younger generation about the importance and benefits of reunification for the whole Korean people.
Thank you. Dr. Tice, would you like to add on?
So I would say that I think sometimes it's best not to be first. And I think South Korea learned something from the experiences of Germany and what they went through in their reunification. And I think the two societies have been governed so differently and are so separate that it will take time before there could be a full political unification. But just allowing people to travel back and forth to meet their family, allowing cultural exchanges, allowing economic cooperation sets the path towards eventual reunification. I know about 80% of the South Korean population wants to have unification. My guess is that North Koreans do not want to stay separate either. So it's going to be a long process. And I think one thing I wanted to comment on, the student said, I think the U.S. really needs to play a role of supporting South Korea's goals as opposed to placing its own desires ahead of what South Korea wants. And I think when the U.S. goes in and approaches North Korea as, we won't have any talks until you get rid of nuclear weapons, you're basically putting the goal before the negotiations. And that doesn't make sense to me. In 1994, the Clinton administration reached an agreed framework for denuclearization of North Korea. And I think the ambassador was correct. The neocons came in the Bush administration, cut off the oil shipments, the fuel supply, and really set us back a long distance. I would like to imagine what relationships would be like if we'd had those 27 years of contact between North and South Korea. So I think it's going to be small steps.
But, you know,
Thank-
my question was related to, do we proceed by leaving the nuclear weapons there, or do we actually make that as part of the negotiation?
Well, I think the goal is to get rid of them, but you don't start by demanding the goal. So it's going to be a process to get to that. And we may not ever get to that. But at least you have the conversations and you're working towards that goal. And in the meantime, lots of other things are happening.
Thank you, Dr. Tice. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Robbie Joseph, and I've been interested in history for a long time. I'm old school, so what about the big brother in the world, China? You know, China is one reason why unification hasn't, reunification hasn't gone much further. So what does the ambassador think about that?
Okay, China's position towards reunification of Korea. If reunification is political reunification, it's as I said, it's a long-term process. So if it happens, it's a thing of distant future. So I don't have any clear idea about China's view about political unification. I don't even have a specific view about something which will happen in distant future. But anyway, about China's approach to North Korean issues. First, North Korean nuclear weapons. You know, going back to Cold War eras, when China was developing its nuclear weapons, Soviet Union wanted to prevent China from becoming nuclear power state. As Soviet Union did towards China, China did the same towards North Korea. So that's why in 2017, China agreed to the series of resolutions about sanctions on North Korea because of their nuclear and missile launch tests. But at the same time, these days the relationship has improved fairly, and I guess behind that, I guess there is some historical origin. You know, Korea established relationship with Soviet Union and then Russia in 1990, and we normalized relations with China in 1992. At that time, North Korea was very unhappy about South Korea establishing relations with China and Russia. Why North Korea couldn't do the same towards United States? So, with regard to North Korea's gesture towards normalization of relations with United States, China seems to be not objecting in any way. So, towards the normalization of relations between North Korea and United States, and the talks on nuclear issues, Japan does not show any hostility of any kind. So China's position towards North Korea is maybe somewhat mixed, but they do not put any noticeable obstacle towards dialogue and reconciliation between South and North Korea, as well as improvement of relations between North Korea and the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Ang. I was instructed to wrap up the panel discussion by 8:30, but I think this discussion is going to be really interesting, and if Mr. Park allows me, so I would like to take one more question. Please.
I have a question to all three of you. And now that we have new administration, which is Joe Biden, and in your opinion, is U.S. and South Korea relationship is going to be better or worse, and why not? And also U.S. relationship with North Korea is going to be better, or why and why not?
Thank you. Dr. Tice, would you like to answer to that?
Sure. So I think whether it's better or worse is sort of in the eye of the beholder. I think the U.S.-South Korea relationship will be much more predictable and carried out through traditional channels. Donald Trump was an outsider that was not really a part of the sort of institutionalized political structure in the United States, so he felt free to do whatever he wanted. Joe Biden has grown up through that structure his whole career. The people serving is Secretary of State, deputies, etc., served in the Obama administration. They've been in the Foreign Service most of their careers. So I think we will be seeing a reversion to more traditional diplomatic methods. And I don't think it will be bad for the South Korean-U.S. relationship. But I think it will be more difficult on North Korea because, I think it will, because it is the traditional foreign policy establishment, they have their set ways of operating, and it's going to take a lot to sort of pull out of that. And I think if what we're saying is you got to give up your nuclear weapons to talk, there's not going to be much talk. Now, I've seen some indications Biden has said he might be willing to talk for a promise that North Korea will think about giving up their nuclear weapons. And if he's willing to do that, then I think that relationship can develop over time very slowly.
Well, I guess Professor Tice and I am on the same wavelength.
Great.
And concerning U.S. and North Korea relationship, the denuclearization first approach, it didn't work. It didn't work 20 years ago. It didn't work during Trump years. So I guess the Biden administration people, policymakers, they think, I think they realize this is the reality, and they will do their reality check. And at the same time, North Korea is modernizing, expanding its nuclear arsenal. And it is widely understood that North Korean ICBM can reach any cities in the United States. So the situation is becoming more and more urgent. So they feel like it's better to improve relations with North Korea fast. And this is no time for stalling. So I cautiously am optimistic about the future relationship between North Korea and the United States.
I agree with Dr. Tai's comments and also Mr. An's comment. I think the Biden administration is really interested in restoring so-called trilateral alliance, Korea, Japan, and the United States. And that is why I believe that Biden administration's leadership is going to be really important because Korea, South Korea, and Japan, they have some unresolved issues, a lot of historical issues as well. At the same time, South Korea and the United States, they may have a little bit different perspectives on a few issues. Actually, for example, how do we see the human rights issues in North Korea or anti-flag law in South Korea, something like that, right? So there are some challenges, but I do think that the alliance between South Korea and the United States will be much more stronger because during the last administration, I am not actually sure the Trump administration was interested in building and strengthening the alliance between the United States and South Korea. Biden administration is going back to the traditional approach, right? So the alliance between South Korea and the United States will be critical, and not only just the North and South Korean relationship, but also regional stability in East Asia. So I am very hopeful about the possibility and future of U.S. and South Korea alliance. So I really want to hear more from the panelists, and I really want to get more questions from the floor. But this is Friday night. I would not want to hold you any longer. So I thank Mr. An and then Dr. Thais for sharing their insights. And also I thank the audience for investing your time tonight on this important, meaningful topic of the peaceful unification of Korea. I'm also grateful to the Consul General of Korea in Houston and the National Unification Advisory Council Houston chapter for hosting this wonderful event. Thank you all again and have a rest of the night.